Good morning. This is Hubert Johnson with Taxes Made Easy from GuardianTaxLaw.com. Hope everybody had a great weekend as we get ready for tax season. We've got a fun week coming up, and today I wanted to kind of take a step back. When does it make sense to hire a tax professional? So I've kind of touched on this topic, but I kind of want to do a deep dive into this today and discuss. People ask all the time, why should I hire you? Do I need a tax professional? And we're going to talk about the ins and outs. What can a good tax professional do for you, and how to spot someone that's not, or a company that's not really going to do the best work for you. And do you even need them in the first place? So again, stay with us. I thank you for watching live or on rebroadcast, and it's going to be a very informative session for you today. So again, thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy, and today we're going to be talking about how to decide if you actually need a tax professional or not. So you might consider, hey, this is a tax professional telling us. You might think I'm a little biased, and maybe I am, but there's also plenty of times I tell people, don't hire me. And it's important that you talk to someone that's going to have your interest first, and not just pushing everybody to hire on now, we'll figure it out later. And that's what I hear from a lot of companies. So if you're talking to someone and they just want to get you in the door, pay us this amount, we'll get started on your case. It's kind of like a little hook. Pay us $600-700, we'll run you a little compliance check for free. What they're doing, and then they'll send you a whole report and all kinds of information. It's just a service where they pay $250, charge you $500-600. They get your information, they plug it in the system, and it pops it out real quick. So it's a quick way to get your power of attorney on file, but at the same time, you're paying them to just run a program. So, excuse me, I want to take a step back and look at a larger world of what kind of tax professionals are out there and who do you really need at what time. Because when people call us, there's plenty of times you say, you don't need us. You need a CPA. You need a simple tax preparer. And they can save people a lot of money, because if it's a small job, you just need someone to come in and take care of it. If it's just filing taxes, you don't need to pay thousands of dollars to a tax debt resolution firm. And if you don't think there's a markup on tax preparation, there absolutely is. So the way most cases should work is you go in and you should be, whoever's working with you should set you up for long-term success. They're not talking about helping you out and making sure that you're connected to good professionals moving forward to handle your case. And that shouldn't be them. You shouldn't be working with a tax debt resolution company forever unless you're doing tax returns and they're continuing to do those forever. But again, depending on your situation, you very well might need a CPA or someone that has more experience than what you're going to typically run into at a tax debt resolution firm. And again, it varies. Every firm is different. I've seen firms that had experienced tax professionals working for them, or tax preparation professionals. I've seen others that didn't. So you've got to be very aware of where you're going with, of who you're hiring, what kind of experience they have. So first of all, tax preparation. If you're just doing simple tax prep, you do not need a tax attorney to prepare your tax returns unless you're dealing with very high net worth individuals where there's a lot of complications, foreign assets. It's very rare that tax attorneys will prepare tax returns unless it's one of those cases where you have a lot of issues, there's a lot of gray areas, and you want someone to argue and present the best case for you. That is not what most taxpayers need. What most taxpayers need is they just need someone to go, if you have a simple return, if it's just a straight W-2 return, you usually find to use H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, Liberty Tax, any of those larger tax companies that we see that ads for all the time. And you go in there and they have people that are trained to do basic tax returns. Can they sometimes do more complicated returns? Yeah, sometimes. But more often than not, if it's more than a simple return, and they, especially if they start charging an extra $80 to $100 per schedule, if you have a schedule or two, you definitely want to consider going somewhere else and getting better service. So, in general, you want to look for someone that matches the complication of your tax returns. TurboTax works very well if you're using simple returns. My own kids use TurboTax. If it's a very simple, straightforward return, one of my kids this year is using the free online program that the IRS made available. It's just a W-2 case, very straightforward, and he's just a single guy, no dependents, thank goodness. He's too young. Just turned 19. Anyway, but it's just, if you've got something simple, you can use any of these simple programs or companies to get it prepared very easily, and it should be less than $100. Anyone's charging you more than $100 for a tax return, there are CPAs out there or tax professionals that will do better work for less money. So anytime you have a small business, if you're not claiming the standard deduction, if you have mortgage interest, that's where I would recommend finding a tax preparer. Now, there are tax preparers, even CPAs, that are very reasonable. Most tax preparers that aren't CPAs tend to be a little bit more reasonable as price overall, but it really depends. I've known tax preparers that charged an arm and a leg up to $600 a return, which is a lot. Now, if it's a very difficult, complicated return, yeah, it can cost that much, but most returns don't get that complicated. So if you don't have a business, or if you do have a business and it's just one business and it's just a simple profit and loss, it shouldn't cost you an arm and a leg to get a tax return done. If you're paying thousands upon thousands of dollars, either you have a very complicated case or you're getting overcharged. And sometimes really good CPAs will overcharge because they're just that busy and they don't need more work. So if you want them to squeeze out some more time on the weekend for them to handle your case, they're going to charge you for it. That's where it might work to go around and find some alternatives, get a second opinion. And again, if you have any questions, we do refer to CPAs all across the country on a regular basis. Okay. Again, so if you have multiple businesses going on, if you have foreign investments, you have things like that, that's where you want to consider looking or working with the CPA and making sure you get someone that really knows what they're doing. Talk to them about their experience, their credentials, and having letters by their name does not mean they know what they're doing or that they're really good. If they can fill you with a sense of confidence, that's why it's always, I know it's a little bit of pain to go and get a second opinion, check around, check their reviews. It is very important to do so because it's not all CPAs are made the same. Most of them are pretty ethical and they have a license to protect, but there are definitely those that do overcharge, and sometimes it's the more experienced ones, the better ones that overcharge because, like I said before, they don't need the work and they don't want to deal with the hassles of people that don't have anything put together. So that's just tax preparation. You really should not be hiring tax attorneys for tax preparation or most tax debt resolution firms, as you will get overcharged in most cases or in many cases. Now, a lot of mainstream firms saw this during the Super Bowl, TurboTax into it. They have this 2-year guarantee that if you get audited, that they will represent you. So you don't have anything to worry about when using them, right? Most audits happen after 2 years. So this 2-year guarantee that they offer is not worth very much. And again, I'm sure TurboTax or HR Block, they're going to watch this sometime, or someone's going to see this and say, hey, this guy talks about us. Yeah, because I've seen too many taxpayers hurt. Too many taxpayers that use their services and think they're protected. And then when push comes to shove, they don't know how to do the audit. They have to hire someone else to deal with their mess. Are there people there that can handle audits? Yeah, but they're overwhelmed and they're few and far between. So audit defense is something I would consider. You need to talk to a CPA. Can a tax preparer represent you in an audit? Yes. Depends on how good they are and how familiar they are. So again, you either need a really good tax preparer, you need a CPA, or sometimes a tax attorney if it's complicated enough. I've handled audits, and a lot of it is negotiation. So it's not so much it's numbers driven, but looking at what the auditor is wanting and negotiating with them. So sometimes if you need more negotiations than just throwing numbers at them, a tax attorney might be the right fit. But if you need someone to just go through reams of information, put it together and submit it, that's how it should work. A CPA might be the better fit. So ideally, if you are working with a tax attorney, many times we work with the CPA as well to get everything prepared, make sure we have the documents, get together, and we'll take that and negotiate directly with the IRS to get the best resolution for you. I had a case recently. This guy was being audited, and he was running things a little fast and loose with his business, didn't have the best record keeping, had some skeletons in his closet. Not that he was doing anything bad. He was just running his business, didn't know how it was supposed to be done. And so he's like, look, if they do a full audit on me, there's problems they can find that I don't want them to. So do we hide information from the IRS? No. But we provided everything they wanted more, and the bad stuff was hidden within there. We highlighted the good stuff. We went in one meeting, boom, audit was done. It was wrapped up in one meeting, which is the exception. The client was so happy. He just had a couple $1,000s that he owed to them. He was expecting $40,000, $50,000. And if things went south, that's where it could have gone. So he was thrilled with it. Did he really need me as a tax attorney? He did for that peace of mind, so that he would feel comfortable. He felt at ease in the meeting. The auditor was actually pretty nice and generous, and we got everything done and taken care of, but we were speaking the same language. Could he have used a CPA in that meeting? Possibly, yeah, but it's more negotiation than anything else. So depending on your comfort level, depending on how you feel going into it, and you can start an audit with the CPA, and then if things get weird or they're playing hardball, etc., you can turn to an attorney if you need someone to go toe-to-toe with the IRS. Tax debt resolutions. This is interesting. So, can you handle an audit by yourself? Absolutely. If you know what you're doing. So I've had little old ladies hire me, and someone asked me, well, why do they need you? Couldn't they do this on their own? Like, yes. But you can say that about most things an attorney does. People can go file for the divorce by themselves. Should they? Very possibly not. People can go start a business. They can run a business, but should they do that without any kind of legal advice? When things go south, that's when you want good advice and you want to have everything put together and done right. So I've helped little old ladies plenty of times that didn't want to deal with the IRS. They're intimidated by the IRS, didn't know how to go through things. And I've also had plenty of times where a little old lady retired on a fixed income pension or Social Security, got put on an installment agreement. Sometimes it's only $100, $200, but it's $100, $200 she didn't have. She's paying on this installment agreement that's never going to pay off the debt. She doesn't know, what her rights are. And so they call us up and they tell us, look, I need some help. I called them. This is what they set me up on. And this has happened plenty of times where I've called the IRS and I'm being a little bit of a stinker, a little bit of a, oh, well, here's the situation. What rights do they have? They're like, oh, they have to set up an installment agreement. I'm like, oh, unless we present financial information. Like, well, yeah, if you go through all the financial information and it shows X, Y, and Z, then you might qualify for something else. And they'll play coy. The IRS will hide the ball. So when we'll call in, broker's a joke, and they'll still try to get them to pay money, even though it's well within their rights to do a hardship status and not pay anything. Now, again, just like everybody, everything varies at the IRS, and I'm right in the middle of a break. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. Sorry, I got a little carried away. Sometimes I get a little emotional about how these cases go. What I was saying when we hit the break was essentially there's times when people call in, little old ladies or elderly gentlemen that are on a fixed income, they don't have much money to their name, or someone that's really poor. And the number one thing the IRS will push for is some kind of payment plan. They want to get something out of them. When I've done this plenty of times where I call and I'll play coy or play dumb at first. It's like, oh, well, here's the situation. What can we set up? And they will almost always tell me, well, you have to set up some kind of installment agreement. I'll say, really, is this what you tell everybody that calls in, that they don't know their rights? It's like, well, what if they can't afford to make payments? Oh, well, then you have to present financial information. You have to go through all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like, well, can't we just do that over the phone? Well, we can if you have everything together. I'm like, okay. And then the moment they clue in that, oh, well, I'm talking to someone that knows what he's doing, their demeanor changes. Their game stop. And they're like, okay, well, let's go through the financials. But when you're first talking to them, and this is not all people at the IRS, but it's many, their first knee-jerk reaction, well, they don't talk about your rights. They don't talk about what you qualify for. They're not going to tell you about what tax debts are expiring. They'll tell you that you have to pay before the tax debt expires. It used to be, 10 plus years ago, that the IRS would tell people you have to file an extension for them to collect and extend out the CSED. But it was such a problem that the IRS was pressuring so many people into doing this that didn't know their rights. And you might ask, why would someone ever do that? Well, there were rare circumstances that it made sense, but it was so abused that the IRS got rid of it. Congress pressured them and said, no, you're not going to do this anymore. So, which is a good change. It was a very good change. So now they can't. There's rare circumstances where you can extend out an expiration date, but it's very rarely used. But when you call the IRS, you are not calling and speaking to a friend. There's very nice people over there, don't get me wrong. But as an institution, the IRS there is there to collect your money. It's a giant collection agency. When you understand that they are not there to represent your rights, they are not there to tell you what you can do. And it's so funny that I talk to them and I see bad advice given by the IRS all the time. So with installment agreements, they're going to try to get you to full pay the balance any way they can. They are not there to negotiate and try to get the lowest payment for you. Now, there are plenty of times if you already have an installment agreement, be very wary of someone saying, hey, I just want to get a lower installment agreement. I can save you some money. And unless they go through the financial information for you, they don't know squat about your case. Unless they go through the income, the expenses, your assets, and just go through and question you on all of that, they don't know, and they can't tell you what they can do for you because they haven't gone over your case. Now, there's some obvious cases where you can go through and very quickly see, okay, I see where this case is going. But if someone is in an installment agreement, we have a policy at our office that we are very careful about hiring them or having them hire us, because what we don't want, and plenty of companies do this, is they'll hire them and they'll go through the information and say, oh, well, you were paying $800 a month, we can get you down to $700 a month. And yeah, we charge you a few $1,000s to be able to tell you that. That's not very helpful. So if someone already has an installment agreement, unless we can do something better like a hardship status or an offer in compromise, we usually don't even take the case. So be wary of someone that's too eager to take your case, wants you to sign, and especially if they're using any kind of high pressure sales. You're talking to a salesman and they don't give two flips about your case. They just want to get you to sign on so they can go cha-ching and get another commission bonus. So, do people need help with installment agreements? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If you have a pretty simple case, you owe less than $50,000 or $25,000, it's pretty simple to just call the IRS, and we've talked about that. Just get an idea of what you're going to be paying monthly. You divide the total tax debt by 72, add some other little extra wiggle room in there because and ongoing interest is so high. So usually I'm adding about $30 or $40 to every installment agreement. But again, I try to get it as low as possible. But if someone's positive a couple $1,000s a month, they just have the money, then sometimes the streamlining the installment agreement is by far the best bet for them. And there's not a whole lot of negotiation there. There can be some ways that we can save people thousands of dollars by what tax returns need to be filed, by doing a first-time penalty abatement if they qualify. So it almost never hurts to call and get good information. But that is very different than hiring someone and paying them thousands of dollars to do something pretty simple. And their fee, if they end up doing something very simple, should be much lower. It should reflect the time that's going to be required to put into the case. Now, one of the big things that people say is like, if I have business debt, if I have business issues, can I handle that by myself, or should I hire a tax professional? When you get into business cases, it gets a lot more complicated. If you have a business background, if you understand the tax liabilities and how to close businesses out, if you understand that, can you represent yourself? Sure, but again, the more complicated it is, the more likely you're going to need real professional help. If you owe more than $20,000 in payroll taxes and you can't just pay it off, you should probably get help. The higher that balance, payroll, anything over $20,000, I would say at least get some good advice. 50 or higher, you absolutely should be having a professional represent you, because these can shut down your business. Again, you have these assessed against you personally. It gets very nasty very quick. So if you have any payroll issues, unless you can afford to just pay it off, I would recommend getting someone to make sure it's done right. Now, then we talk about an offer and compromise. The IRS has made the offer and compromise program harder than ever. The very first letter that most people get today is a rejection letter for one reason or another. And it doesn't seem to even really matter. We've had people retire, not working, and then they'll get a notice saying your offer is being rejected unless you call. And then in the fine print below it says you have to call us within 10 days, or your offer will be returned. They'll ask for estimated tax payments when someone isn't making any money or they're just on Social Security. They'll ask for something. So be very aware that the process is intended, it's designed to weed people out and get as many offers rejected as possible. Didn't used to be like that. It's changed, and not for the better, and especially in the last few years. So you have that first kind of weeding out period in about a month afterwards, and then your first call from the revenue officer. This is why you have to be, or offer examiner, you have to be on top of it. Your first call is often, I need A, B, C, D, and E, and you need to respond within a week. And if you don't respond, they return your offer. If you don't provide everything that's required, they return your offer. Can you get more time? Yes, but you have to maintain that communication with them. So throughout the whole process, there's a dozen different ways to get an offer returned or rejected. And it is very important, like when they send you back the charts, if you don't understand their analysis and how they're looking at it, trust me, it's not common knowledge. It's not something I would ever expect anybody on the street to know. It's not something I would expect most attorneys to know. You can be a math whiz or an economics whiz, and you can look at their analysis and go, what is this? I don't get it. You have to understand their program, their rules and regulations to really deal with counter offers, potentially rejected offers where they're coming up with different numbers than you, and this is what they typically do. And to understand when the IRS is just plain wrong. So that's why, in my opinion, most offers get rejected. You have people that are underqualified performing the offers, people that don't understand the full process, and the collections analysis is very different than preparing taxes. It's very different altogether. So if you're considering an offer and compromise, you should at least run it by a tax professional, someone with plenty of experience doing offer and compromises. Now, I talk to most tax preparers, they don't have the experience. Anybody on H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, any of those guys, if they say, let me do an offer and compromise for you, I would absolutely go get a second or third opinion. There might be someone that has an inkling of how to do it, but they're not set up to handle it. Some CPAs will do an offer and compromise. I have yet to run into a super CPA that does it regularly, that knows the ins and outs. I've had plenty of CPAs that I've talked to that did the occasional offer and compromise, but it wasn't their cup of tea. And I referred them plenty of business, and they said, hey, I'll refer all these to you. I'd rather you do it because that's what you do. That's what we specialize in. So really, if you're doing an offer and compromise, you have a revenue officer, you have a larger payroll case, if you have a larger tax debt, you really should be talking to a tax debt professional. So either tax debt resolution company, or where there's enrolled agents, maybe CPAs, that this is what they do on a regular basis, or you talk to someone that, a tax attorney that they specialize in this. So common misnomer, who's going to cost me more, a tax attorney or a tax debt resolution company? It all depends. There are plenty of tax attorneys that charge as much or more. Typically, my office, we charge about 1/3 to 50% less than most tax debt resolution companies because they're outrageous. And usually they're not going to do great work. I'm sure there are people that do decent work. I came from a tax debt resolution company, but then it was all tax attorneys. So it really depends on where you are and the reviews and the quality of work that's expected. So I had someone just the other day, they were quoted $12,000 to prepare taxes and resolve the case. I looked at it and said, look, this is a fairly large case, but $12,000, I'll charge, I think I quoted him $6,500. No, it was $5,500. It must have been closer to $5,500. And then the tax preparation, I said, we're going to refer you to some people that are good, that are reasonable with their prices. Maximum, you might pay $2,500. So that would be a total of $8,000 versus $12,000. I said, we'll probably at least save you $4,000. And the tax preparation could easily be much less than that. And we work hand in hand with the tax preparers or CPAs that we refer people to make sure they get their stuff done quickly, efficiently, and get it out the door. Now, here's the funny thing. I can't tell you how many times the IRS has told people, well, just go file an offer in compromise. The people you're talking to in collections, they don't have a clue how the offer and compromise process works. So you've got one, again, there are all kinds of different departments. I talked to a revenue officer the other day on a high dollar case, someone that has income of $300,000 to $400,000 a year. His income was down when he first hired us. Someone like, hey, we can do an offer and compromise. But then the next year, he had $300,000 in income. This year, it looks like he'll have $400,000 in income. But he owes about $1.8 million in debt. That's a very high debt. But when you look at income of $400,000, even if they allow for $100,000 in personal expenses, which is high, that's still $300,000 he can pay towards a debt, and he could have it paid off in 6 to 7 years, easy. The IRS is not going to accept that offer. So we're talking to the revenue officer, and again, I've worked with him before. This is out of New York, and a very reasonable guy. But he mentioned doing an offer and compromise. He said, hey, have you considered that? It's like, yes, we've considered that. We've looked at it, and this is why it wouldn't qualify. And I was able to rattle off very quickly, this is why. If the situation changes, we might look at it, but the IRS does a 3-year average. And the revenue officer has been doing this 20 plus years. He says, oh my goodness, well, I don't know. I don't do them. I'm like, well, why are you recommending it? I've had even worse situations. One case where this gentleman, people all the time in the IRS, when someone's got a sob story and they don't know what to do with it, and I say that in a productive way. There's plenty of times when the time is right, when they have flexibility, where you can use someone's, and I say sob story, but the reality of what's going on in their life to get a better, more favorable resolution for you. But you have to have the facts, and you have to be asking the IRS to do something they can do, that department has control over. So when I'm doing, I use the facts of the case all the time. It has to be real facts. I'm not going to blow snow at the IRS or just make stuff up. But when you get someone on your side, you can get a lot more accomplished. When you just kind of unload on the IRS because people are stressed out, sometimes they talk to someone, they think they're listening, and they will just get all that stress off their shoulders. If the IRS doesn't know how to handle it, and they don't have a good resolution for them, they'll tell them, oh, well, have you thought about an offer and compromise? They don't know if you qualify. And too often they're just putting it out there to get the person off the call because they don't know what to do. You're not talking to someone that can actually use that, and if you persuade them, and get them on their side. There's times they can kind of help, but if they can't help, or if the numbers just don't match, they can't help you. And ironically, they'll tell people go file an offer and compromise when they don't qualify. You're wasting more time, more money, just to end up right back in the same position. So my wife hates it when I try to problem solve because I'm one of those guys. I go right to the heart of the matter. What do we need to fix this case? What do we need to resolve this case? And let's not beat around the bush. Let's not play games. Let's go ahead and take care of this because time is money. It's my time is worth valuable, and so is your time. And if you're just kicking down the can down the road, you're getting hit with more penalties, more interest. And so I see people plenty of time where the IRS tells them, hey, just do an offer, and they don't qualify. Or they do try an offer and they pay more money and get bounced around the system and have an offer rejected. One of the worst cases I saw was this guy. He's dealing with the IRS, and it was a fairly complicated case. And this is, before I got involved. And they told him, there was a possible criminal investigation, I believe. But they made a settlement. They said, look, we're going to hit you with this. It's not going to be fraud, but you don't have the money. You can go and do an offer and compromise and wipe it out with the IRS. He said, well, what about the state of California? And they said, oh, sure, go do an offer with the state of California too. He got his IRS offer accepted, not with the state of California. And he had a huge mess he had to deal with, and he was so upset, but he got bad advice for someone at the IRS. So again, we'll be right back after the short break and wrap this up. Welcome back, everybody, to Taxes Made Easy here on the Smart Money Culture.tv. So we're talking about people giving bad advice regarding options. The IRS gives bad advice all the time. They'll tell people to file 10 years of returns. They'll tell people to do things that actually hurt them on a regular basis. Now, half the time it's because they don't know better. The other half the time is because they don't have your interests at heart. They're not there. Their job is not to defend your rights and options. So this is why getting good advice is so important. I've shared this story about the gentleman. He owed the California Franchise Tax Board a good amount of money, and we had already settled an offer with the IRS. But again, I told him from the beginning, look, you're not going to get an offer. You have to be pretty much, with the state of California, you have to be fully retired or disabled without the ability to work. And this guy was still working. And he had someone else tell him, do an offer, do an offer. I said, who is this joker? I mean, first of all, it's not his case. So why is he telling somebody, and messing with someone else's someone else's case by giving bad advice? So I said, let's do a three-way call. Where is this guy coming from saying that you can do an offer and compromise? So we got on the conference call, and I said, look, this is the situation. This is where he is. He gave me full permission to talk to this guy. And I said, these are the reasons he does not qualify for an offer with the state of California. Why do you think he qualifies with these issues? And his answer left me dumbfounded. He says, well, sometimes I'll just offer him and just see what sticks. I'll just throw offers at him and see what sticks, and sometimes every now and then I might get something through. And I'm like, you charge people to do this? You charge people to submit offers knowing that most likely they won't be accepted? And he's like, well, sometimes every now and then, I might not charge them extra that much, but we'll just see what happens. I was like, are you kidding me? That is not being a professional. Someone cannot lay out and answer why you would qualify or why you don't qualify for an offer and compromise. I would not trust them as far as you can throw them. Just to make my client easy, we submitted an offer to California on that case. It was rejected just like I thought it would be, because he didn't meet the criteria that they insist on. Then we set up a resolution for him, that we told him he would qualify for in the first place, and we took care of him. But again, just if someone's just like, well, we'll just see what sticks. Well, put something together. They don't know what they're doing. Doesn't matter how long. This guy was looking to retire. So he'd been doing this for a long time. This is why it's so important to get good information, talk to different people. If someone doesn't explain what's going on, and sometimes I can over-explain a little bit, but I'd rather say, hey, take a moment. Let's answer all your questions. Make sure you feel comfortable. And if someone doesn't want me to go in depth, okay, I'll cover it and mention the important things. But we explain how to resolve your current debt, how to stay out of debt and not have this problem moving forward, and then what your rights and options are. And let the client or the taxpayer choose what's best for them. There's times I thought, non-collectible status was the best way to go. And the client was like, no, I really want to pay this. It's important for me to do this. I'm like, okay. Or, they want to do an offer for some reason, or, they want to get into a house, so they want to do an installment agreement first. Okay. I just want them to go in with their eyes open and be able to make an informed decision. So are there cases that are beyond most tax attorneys? Absolutely. Now, if something is getting a little hairy, where someone, tax debt resolution firm says, well, let's go to tax court. And this is where they keep piling on the fees and the balances go up and up. And if you're the one insisting on going to tax court and all this, you're going to pay out the nose. And if you don't have a good case for tax court, and if you don't have a good attorney that will tell you, hey, this is not the best way to go forward, then you need to get a second opinion. If someone's too gung-ho every time you want to spend more money with them, you need to put the brakes on, get a second opinion. I've seen it happen too many times where attorneys or tax professionals that push someone to tax court, they collect the fees, and then the client gets hammered. These are the kind of cases that go up to district court. This is where you're dealing with the Department of Justice. I have never had one of my cases go there because it makes no sense. You lose rights and options when you leave the IRS and you go to district court. The IRM, Internal Revenue Manual, does not apply anymore, and there are plenty of rights and protections there that you lose out on. And it's a lot more expensive to hire and pay for attorneys to file pleadings and show up in court and do all that rather than doing most of the negotiations over the phone. It's a lot more affordable. This is where cases jump into now you're dealing in the tens, $20,000, $30,000 range. If someone has to act, and that's on top of the initial fees. It gets crazy expensive, and unless you're dealing with very, very large cases, it doesn't make any sense. And often for the largest cases, I've dealt with very large cases, $1 million cases, where it made no sense whatsoever. Because going to tax court would only hurt them. So make sure you're talking to the right person, making sure that you're doing the right things, because not only can it go to tax court, but if you are hiding assets, if you're not dealing fairly with the IRS, if they detect that you're playing around, you can get referred for a criminal tax case or criminal prosecution. Any tax professional that steers you in that direction and says, look, you can hide this and that asset, or we'll send it overseas and try to prevent the IRS from seeing it, fire them. Run away from them as fast as possible, because the problems that they will get you into are absolutely not worth whatever short-term, short-sighted savings that you think you might have. And this applies to many issues today. One of the big issues that I want to touch on tomorrow is the ERC credit, the Employee Retention Credit. That's a big money maker right now, but the IRS is coming after it hard. And they've actually, that's where they're putting a lot of funds and a lot of attention. A lot of audits are happening in that area. So Again, if someone's steering in that direction, absolutely not worth it. Put the brakes on it. Try to resolve the case where you are. Do not go there. If you are hiding assets or someone's giving you shady advice. Now, will I pull a fast one on the IRS? Absolutely, but I'll do it right in front of their face. There's nothing I do that I don't disclose to the IRS. So when I pull a fast one, they see it. They know what I'm doing. They might not like it, but it's within your rights. That's very different than, hey, let's transfer this money or these assets to your brother or your sister. Let's try to send some assets overseas. Let's put stuff in a shell company, etc. You're all that. No, it's horrible advice. Run from them as fast as you can. Because when you get to a criminal tax attorney, that's where someone like me can't do anything more to help you. One of the big cases, cases that turns into criminal prosecution very quickly are tax preparer audits. So if you're a tax preparer and you're getting audited based on your tax returns, get representation. I have helped people in your shoes. I've seen people go to prison over this. So make sure that you get representation as soon as possible, because those are very nasty. Anytime there's a question about fraud or anything like that, you want to avoid that like the plague, and those are very expensive attorneys to handle that. Anytime you're dealing with foreign assets, you want either a very experienced CPA, but most likely an experienced tax attorney to handle those, because you're going to be making legal arguments. It's a lot more of negotiations, SBA loan defaults, ERC cases, international tax questions. So if you have companies and you're dealing with overseas taxation, you almost always want to talk to a CPA that specializes in international taxation, or a tax attorney. And those are issues. International tax is something I don't deal with, but I do know who I can refer you to. So depending on what you're doing, depending on how you're looking at the case, it's very important to get good information and make an informed decision. If I repeat this all the time, it's because it's important. So the kind of key takeaways, we just have a few minutes here. If you have someone that's trying to do everything, they're probably not that good at most things. So you want someone, and you want to confirm that they specialize in the kind of tax law help that you need. And they should explain this to you. If you don't have someone that will sit down and explain it to you, and you don't feel comfortable like you're getting informed through the process, get another opinion. It doesn't cost to get a free consultation, and to get good information. We do free consultations all the time. However, someone does charge for a consultation. Their time is worth it, and it might be worth it to get that paid consultation, as long as they're going to give you good information. Check their reviews. Make sure they have good reputations, that they take care of clients. And make sure it feels like you're comfortable with them. Again, this is one of the biggest things. If you don't feel good, get a second opinion. I'm kind of repeating it myself because it's so important to get good information. Last story, the gentleman hired us. They were paying about $70,000 a month every year in taxes. They didn't know what they were doing. They had a financial advisor helping them, and while she was helping in many ways, taxation was not her forte. We saved them thousands, probably $100,000 a year by just switching up how they were doing things, giving them a little bit of advice and having them switch things up. I've talked about a lot of penalties that have increased. Self-employment penalty is one of the worst. It's gone from 0.5% up to 8%. So making those self-employment taxes payments, so those estimated tax payments for your self-employed or if you have a business is absolutely key. So again, if you have questions, call someone, get some advice. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the employee retention credit and how that affects business. So this has been a huge one in the news. This has been a huge issue. It's not something I handle. Don't want to. There's plenty of people that do handle employee retention credits. But it's a very funny area of the law where the preparer can only charge so much. But you have all these marketing companies that have figured out, hey, we can charge and be kind of like the go-between between the CPA, who's limited on how much they charge, and then the clients. So the IRS tried to set this up so there wasn't a big money-making scam, but it became that anyway. I'm not saying scam. So there's plenty of people that go out and go to work. There's plenty of ERC claims that are valid. And then there's plenty of companies that are just pushing these right and left and giving everybody else a really bad reputation. So the IRS is really coming after these for fraudulent claims, frivolous claims, and they are auditing people right and left. That's why they put a pause on processing those. Is it possible you can still qualify for the ERC? Yes, but the IRS is going to be a lot stingier with them moving forward. So tomorrow we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of it, what the IRS is doing to collect on it. They have new programs that are being announced. So if you think that you might not have qualified, you can qualify for these new programs and actually keep up to 20% of what you got paid, even if it was not done correctly. So again, the IRS wants voluntary compliance. They want to make this as easy as possible. But they're going after the scammers. They're going after people that where it wasn't done correctly. And if you don't fix it, there's going to be very, very hefty fines if they find you first. So again, that's a very important area of law that's developed. And we're going to talk about that in depth tomorrow. If you have any questions, like always, give us a call. 520-485-7371 is our main line, or you can go to us at guardiantaxlaw.com. Or if you are interested in the show, you can always reach out to us by going to the smartmoneyculture.tv and clicking that opportunity button in the top right corner. So again, biggest thing out here is if you don't know who you need, call and ask, look it up, and then make sure that whoever you're dealing with specializes in that kind of work and that they're an expert in that. So again, they should be able to instill confidence in you and explain things to you and give you peace of mind dealing with some of the most stressful things in life. So hope you have a great day.